Namaste and greetings to all. Today marks the third and the final day of our faculty development program, Biology Unlocked, where we got the opportunity to attend enriching sessions. We gained valuable insights and deepened our understanding in key concepts of biology. Special thanks to all the speakers for their engaging and informative sessions. Shahara Banu ma'am, please mute yourself. Before we begin with today's session, I'm delighted to invite Mamta Pahwa ma'am from BVV Vidhyashram, Jaipur, who lead us in Vedic prayer, shlok, or Vedic prayer mantra. Vedic prayer is a core element of Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan ethos. Ma'am, Mamta Pahwa ma'am, please.
Thank you, ma'am. Namaskar, sir. Pranam, sir. Ma'am, I am audible?
Yeah, you are audible, ma'am.
Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am. For the first session, we welcome our esteemed speaker and guest, Professor G S Rajwar, sir, who has graciously accepted our invitation to address a subject of immense global significance, biodiversity in the context of climate change. Sir is associated with a long period of more than 40 years of Himalayan ecology, published 7 books and 105 research papers on mountain ecology in national and international journals. Sir received awards including Brilliant Scientist recognition by 14th International Botanical Congress, Berlin in 1987. He is a recipient of Outstanding Scholar at the First International Congress on Ecological Integrity and Environmental Ethics. Elected as a Fellow of Linnean Society of London and National Institute of Ecology. Sir, we are honored to have you amongst us. Yes, in a time when our planet is facing unprecedented environmental changes, the intersection of biodiversity and climate change has become more critical than ever. Biodiversity, the rich variety of life on Earth, not only supports ecosystem, but also plays a crucial role in climatic regulation, food security, and sustainable development. Sir's session will definitely encourage us and contribute to our understanding of how climate change affects ecosystem and what measures can be taken to protect and preserve our natural heritage. Sir, platform is yours. So I'll share the slide.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I'm thankful to the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan and especially Dr. Anil Sharma, who is the education officer of this Bhavan, of this group of education, known for the quality in the learning of teaching and learning. And I am also thankful to the organizers of this Jaipur branch of this Bhavan. I'd like to start my small presentation that's on biodiversity in climate change scenario. Basically, we know biodiversity is actually is the part of the nature. Please change it, please. So before knowing about the biodiversity, we should know what is nature and how the nature is related with the mankind or the humans in the nature. Nature is actually what we are composed of, life or organic or living things, non-living or non-organic things, because nature contains everything. So nature has living as well as non-living components. So nature is the part, we can say man is the part of nature. So mankind is being a part of nature is responsible for maintaining it, for using it, and for, we can say, conserving it. Nature has been defined by various, we can say, poets and writers of our country. For example, Sumitranandan Pant, who has written a number of books regarding the beauty of nature, the quality of nature, how the nature affects us, and how we live in the nature. Subhadra Kumari Chauhan has also written, Sarveshwar Dayal Saxena has also written about the, like Subhadra Kumari Chauhan has published his book, and यह कदम का पेड़, और इसी तरह से सर्वेश्वर दयाल सक्सेना जी ने भी बहुत सारी किताबें लिखी हैं जो प्रकृति के विभिन्न आयामों को दर्शाती हैं. Gary Snyder has also defined nature as nature is not a place to visit, it's home. Similarly, Forster has also given his definition. Rembrandt has also given choose only one master. Rembrandt says choose only one master, that is the nature. William Wordsworth also defines nature. Nature never did betray the heart that loved her. So we can say it is the saying of every writer that nature doesn't affect anyone. If we love the nature, certainly neighbor will also love us and will also give us a number of things. John Keats has also defined nature as nature is honest, natural, and being a vital source of the world. So we can say it only fades or it only disintegrates when we disturb the components of nature. So nature has got two types of components that we know very well. Biotic components, which we call the living things. I can say the things which have life. Abiotic components, non-living things, which is found in the nature in our surroundings. So these living things include plants, animals, and microorganisms that we know very well. Forests, animals, parks, different kinds of, we can say, terrestrial as well as we can say aquatic ecosystems on the earth. Non-living things contain the air, water, soil, and rocks. Air, water, soil, and rocks. So nature actually has got different components that we're talking about the living things, whether they are the plants or animals. So each species of plant and animal has got its population. That is the smallest entity of nature, smallest unit of nature, rather we can say species, and its populations. Population is the number of individuals of a particular species. Then the populations make or form a community. So communities are formed by different kinds of populations, we can say different kinds of species. They live in aggregation, or we can say in some complexity of the things by which they are joined together. They live together. And ecosystems are formed or composed of communities. So we can say, suppose there is a community of insects, there is a community of some tree species, there is a community of grass species and other herbs. So these communities actually, different types of communities, they constitute an ecosystem. And then all the ecosystems present on the earth, they constitute a biosphere. In between, there is one more which is called biome. Biome is a regional, we can say, kind of ecosystem. Regional kinds of, we can say, categories of ecosystems. Suppose we say tropical forest biome, or we can say Arctic vegetation biome. This way we can call. All the ecosystems and biomes of the earth, they comprise or they make a biosphere. Biosphere is the largest ecosystem of the earth. We can say all the ecosystems, or we can say earth has got a biggest ecosystem that may be called as a biosphere. Now, if we know about the biodiversity. Biodiversity basically it is the biological diversity, short form of biological diversity. So we know biodiversity consists of it has variability is defined by the CBD, that is the Convention of Biological Diversity. It has been defined by this convention, IBD, as it has been defined as the variability among the living organisms from all sources. We can say these sources may include water, terrestrial and marine, and other aquatic ecosystem complexes of which they are the part. We can say this consists of all kinds of all varieties of living things in different combinations, in different complexities, in different combinations, or in different associations, rather associations. We define biodiversity broadly into three categories. We can say the genetic diversity or the gene level of biodiversity. Then species diversity, that is the species level of biodiversity. Ecosystem diversity, that is the ecosystem level of biodiversity. So these, we can say, these are the kinds or three levels of diversity. Within a species, in a species, whether it's a plant or an animal or microorganism, they have got the different varieties or different kinds of genes within a species, and which enable organism to evolve and adapt to new conditions. We can say it modified itself to new conditions. So these kinds of genes or variation in genes within a species, it constitutes or it makes the genetic diversity. Whereas the species diversity, simply it is the variety of species within a region. We can say diversity of, we can say, suppose we take the Western Ghats. Diversity of Western Ghats means the number of different kinds of species of animals and plants and microorganisms found in that particular region. This will be called its species diversity. And the ecosystem diversity, again, variety of habitats and communities. We know ecosystem is composed of communities, and species also comprise the, we can say, are the part of the community. So different species in association form a community, and different communities make a ecosystem. So we can say different kinds of ecosystem, they constitute the ecosystem diversity, that is the ecosystem level of biodiversity in nature. There are actually, if you Google, if you go for, we can say, data on the biodiversity in India, you find some variation. So as per Government of India data at present, India accounts for 7.8%. Sometimes you will find in some books, it is written as about 8%. 8% species, recorded species of the world, we can say, out of the species which are recorded all over the world. It is actually what happens. Sometimes we do not know how many species are there in the all over the world. If you say, for example, Amazon forest, they have the richest biodiversity in the world, richest diversity of species in the world, and still there are, we can say, millions of species may be there which are not known to the mankind or not known to the scientists or man. They are not known. So out of the recorded species in the world, we have about 8% species which are found in India. Flora are the plants, they are about approximately 47,000 species. Fungi are about, out of flora, the major groups include the fungi, 23,000, angiosperms, 17,000, major groups. And then in the animal kingdom or the fauna, we have about 96,000 species. And among the in the plant kingdom, different groups, arthropoda has got the maximum diversity. You know, arthropoda has the insecta group in it, so that is the highest diversity of species among the within the arthropoda. So there are about more than 57,000 species of arthropods in India. But there are some species in India which are called endemic. Endemic means which are restricted to a particular region. We are restricted to a particular area, which may be a smaller area, or it may be a bigger area. Sometimes you call them broad endemic or narrow endemic. Broad endemic species are those which are found on a very large area. Suppose we can say in the Himalaya, or in the Western Ghats, or we can say in the desert area, or we can say in the Sundarbans area. So larger areas there. But some narrow endemic species are those endemic which are found in a very small area. We can say for a smaller biosphere reserve, or a national park, or a valley, or a lake, or some mountain, part of some mountain. So about 5,200 species of plants are found endemic in India, and more than 1,900 species of animals are said to be endemic to India, which is found only in the Indian regions, different parts of the country. Another point is there is one point comes there, that is called the hotspots of biodiversity or biodiversity. hotspots. There are about approximately 34 biodiversity hotspots in the world. Our global biodiversity hotspots are around 34. Out of these 34, 6 biodiversity hotspots are found in India, or they have been recorded, they have been classified in India. And these 4 global biodiversity hotspots found in India, they are the Himalayas, the Indo-Burma region, the Western Ghats, and Sundarland. Actually, the Himalayas include the whole Himalayas, but the biodiversity hotspot is mainly confined to the eastern Himalayan part of the India, where there is the more humidity or very high humidity in that particular area, and highest rainfall in our country. Like Western Ghats also have got the highest rainfall in our country. So Indo-Burma region, another earlier we had only 2 we can say hotspots of biodiversity, Himalayas and Western Ghats. Now 2 more have been added. Indo-Burma region, and the recent 15 or 20 years they have been added. Indo-Burma region and Sundarland. So that includes, Sundarland actually includes the areas right from the lower eastern part of our country to Thailand, including the Thailand and some other areas. But Western Ghats include the western part of our country, that is the mainly the Kerala part, major part of the Kerala and some parts of Maharashtra and Karnataka also. Indo-Burma region includes the areas of eastern Himalaya next to Himalaya, main Himalaya, we can say, adjoining this Burma region or the Myanmar region. I have listed 5 endangered species of plants and animals in our country. Endangered animal species and endangered plant species. The 5 endangered species are those species which are different, which maybe you can, which maybe called their existence is in threat. Though no, but we have actually different categories of the plants which are we can say getting low population, or which are which have declining populations in nature in different areas. The Royal Bengal tiger, the great Asiatic lion, the snow leopard, Nilgiri tahar, and Indian rhino. These are the 5 we can say major endangered species of animals in the country. I have written their given their zoological names in in blue color. Panthera tigris, Panthera persica, Panthera ansia, Nilgiri tragus, Hylochris, and Rhinoceros unicornis. Then among the plants, we have the major endangered species in our country: Evenity, Diospyros evinum, Indian mallow, Abutilon hirsutum, and Malabar lily, Glorious superba, it's a poisonous plant. SM catkin Amino Texas asamica, milkworm, Polygala irregularis. These are the major endangered species of our country. I couldn't give their figures actually. Then there we come, if we come to the ecosystem, or the rather we can say biodiversity is the part of biodiversity, because ecosystem has got different kinds of species of animals and plants. So they provide us a number of species, services which are called ecosystem services, or the services provided by nature to us. So these are called the services given by nature. Nature gives us services or different kinds of benefits which are, we can say, free of cost. But at the same time, nature also requires that we should maintain the nature. We should keep up the nature in such a way that it is not polluted, it is not destructed, it is not fragmented, or it is not disturbed in any way, so that nature remains as such. Nature also gets itself regenerated. We can say it develops itself, but it gives us services which are, we can say, free of cost, because nature doesn't want anything from us. Nature, we should we should give to the nature only the conservation and protection, or rather we can say recovery of loss to the nature. So humankind benefits from different kinds of resources, and which are called ecosystem services. These services are different kinds. I am not going into detail of these. That's another lecture. We can ecosystem services, another topic. So life support services, climate regulation, life support services. Suppose you can say water and air, both 2 essential elements, things we require: life, water, and pure air, oxygen and water. Climate regulation, it controls the climate. We can say the weather, or we can say controls the cycles in the nature, like water cycle, rainfall, hydrogen cycle, nitrogen cycle, and all other cycles. Water regulation, naturally we know the water circulates within the earth and gives us, and we get the water from the earth. You can say in the through the river, through the mountains, and through the snow, which remains in the mountain areas, particularly in the Himalayan region, but in other parts of the country, we can have the water resources generally, which is obtained, which are actually supported by the proper rainfall. So water regulation, supply, purification of air and water, naturally it purifies itself, because we know plants are the we can say organisms or the life on the earth which assimilate the carbon dioxide, use the carbon dioxide and give us the oxygen around the clock that way. But actually we can say during the daytime, the photosynthesis takes place, and then we get the it is CO2 that is utilized by the plants during carbon assimilation. Then purification, nutrient cycling, we know nitrogen and these compounds are nitrate, carbon, these are recycled. These are cycled in the nature by different components of the ecosystems. Then biological control. We know nature has got its ability to control itself. Nature controls itself with its own resources, with its own organisms. That is called biological control. And we know marketable goods are there. Are no number of goods or things which are collected by the human beings, the different kinds of tribes and populations, and they are marketed. They are sold in the market. So that is again source of, we can say, economy for these tribes and other populations. Other ecosystem services include pollination of crops. We know when pollination is not there, so there won't be any kind of crop cannot grow, fruits cannot grow. You know, papaya, some plants which have got the male flowers in one, male flowers are found only in one plant, female flowers are found in the other plant, which have got the monoecious species in case of plants. So if there is no male plant in the neighborhood or in the surrounding area, certainly the female flowers won't be unable to have the pollination, proper pollination, and then certainly there won't be any fertilization, no production of fruits and seeds. That won't happen. So dispersal of seeds, another thing we can say. We know seeds are disturbed by animals, insects, water, air, everything is there. So that is the part of nature which are very essential service given to us. Production of coastal source from erosion by waves. Naturally, we can say different kinds of vegetation, mountains, rocks. These also provide protection to us from the erosion by waves. Maintenance of biological diversity. So nature itself maintains its biological diversity or biodiversity by different ways. By continuous, we can say, regeneration of species and multiplication of species. In case of animals also, in case of plants also, the seeds, they get germinated. If the annual plant is there naturally, or seasonal plant is there, its seeds will grow in the coming year or the next year or in the coming season. The seeds germinate itself after dormancy. They have a dormancy period. So because of which they do not germinate in the adverse season or adverse part of the year. So this is very important aspect. And maintenance of biological diversity, it is done by itself. And as we get scientific and educational information from the nature. We understand how the plants have got a definite kind of life cycles. A particular animal species has got a different kind of life cycle. So we should learn from this, because they have got a systematic life cycle. So nature tells us we should follow a system of life through these elements of biodiversity or different kinds of species. How they remain, how do they behave, how do they multiply, if in case of animals, how they reproduce, in case of plants, how do they reproduce in the form of seeds, and then they germinate and then develop into new plants. So that we can say that kind of information we get, and which is of educational use. Not only educational, but this is also of some spiritual and some understanding of nature, that how the things are. We should learn how disciplines there among the species in nature. So they have a certain, we can say, a different set of life system that they always follow. That we need to learn. Then we come to the how the climate change is affected by affects the biodiversity. How the change in the, we can say, climate change all over the world, whether it's a mountain, it's a river, it's a ocean, it's a lagoon, it's a estuary, it's a desert area, it's a water body. How these things are, and how the species present in these ecosystems, they are being affected. one of the important aspects here is change in the ecosystems and habitats. We know ecosystems are the units of ecosystems are no doubt the communities and populations of different species, but they are always found in interaction or association. They have got a definite association. Suppose we know a forest ecosystem has got different kinds of tree species particular to that region, and then different kinds of herbs, shrubs, and different kinds of animals, different kinds of insects, and different kinds of parasites, we can say, or other kinds of animals or insects. So they are found. They are which can say they are specific condition, specific association is found in one ecosystem. So it's we can say habitats of plants. The ecosystems are the habitats. So habitats of plants and animals, whether wildlife we can say, they are affected when the climate change is occurring. We know the climate change is heating up many areas. Like if you see the water sources are drying up because and rainfall patterns are changing, weather patterns are changing. We know sometimes there is alteration in the weather phenomena. Sometimes we say the winter season is coming early. Sometimes the summer season is getting late. Sometimes the rains are coming early, or rains are delayed up to the September or October months. So these are patterns, or we can say deviations from the earlier patterns of weather and climate. So these things are affecting. So suppose we can say there is occurring the more frequent and instant droughts are coming up. These are being affected or caused by the climate change. Catastrophic bushfires. That's very important habit. We can say you must be learning Los Angeles fire is a very important problem in all over the Himalaya, from we can say northeastern Himalaya, Arunachal to Kashmir, with western part of the Himalaya. We find there is a very high kind of we can say forest fire during the summer regions that causes a very loss to the species, to the economy, to the forest-based products, because everything is burned. And also the cycle of the nature, which is also affected because the smaller plants or saplings or seedlings, they are also burned by the we can say the highest range of fires, crown fires or forest fires. Then storms and heat waves. We know storms are and cyclones, they are coming up. They are we can say the result of the climate change. And heat waves, no doubt the heat waves are more in the recent decades due to the climate change or the global warming. And naturally, these things always affect the ecosystem and they degrade the ecosystem. Degrade means they will degrade their quality in terms of composition of species, behavior of species, and particularly movement of those species also. Whether they are the plants and animals. Plants do not move, but the forest, there we can say the forest sometimes they, if you take the Himalayan region, certain due to the change in climate, some upper areas are getting hotter. We know the snow cover is also we can say getting low, and because of the low snow cover, the drier regions are coming up. The forest, we can say there is a tree line called in the Himalayan region. Tree line means beyond which there is no tree in the Himalayan region. So tree line is moving up because of the temperature, the increasing temperature. That is again one example of this. And then increased incidence of fire, we know that is the part of again effect of climate change. Naturally, this will cause the loss of biodiversity, and similarly, change in precipitation, that we know a species existence, because certain species are used to, or they are actually exist on a particular amount of the we can say moisture, particular amount of precipitation in a particular area. Suppose in the northeast, in Cherrapunji area, we know they have the highest rainfall. The species growing in that particular area, so they can survive only in the high rainfall and high moisture content in the atmosphere, also in the soil. So such species which are growing in the desert areas, so actually they require a low amount of water, a low amount of precipitation. So this change of we can say change in climate or change in temperature, the higher temperature, that causes loss of biodiversity in many parts of the ecosystem. And certainly if the ecosystem is degraded, ecosystem is affected, so ecosystem services will be lost or they will be decreased. Then shifts in species distribution. This is very important. You know, you might have heard that sometimes what happens in many areas, in the hilly areas, not only hilly areas, also in the northern area, along the Gangetic plain, in the Himalayan area, wildlife, wild animal and man conflicts are there, no doubt. They are there since we can say since the last century or before that also. But in the recent years, what's happening? The biodiversity loss is coming in the areas when we are disturbing the forests and the grasslands on which the we can say the herbivores and the carnivorous animals they survive. They survive in those ecosystems. When these we can say ecosystems are lost, these we can say ecosystems are degraded. What happens? They naturally come towards the human settlements. So certainly the species distribution will remain, will scatter. Similarly, the species of animals and plants, they also show variation in their distribution. Distribution gets affected to a large amount. Changes in species interactions, again, we can say, species interact with each other in any ecosystem or in any community. So what happens? A community composition is, we can say, fixed for a particular, is a definite, or we can say it is always defined, predefined by nature for a particular forest, for a particular grassland, for a particular river ecosystem, for a particular marine ecosystem. So species interactions are coming up. Because of the species interaction changes, the community composition is also going affected, or it is being affected by the climate change or the rising temperature. And then because of this, in some of the areas, not all or not many, but certain species are showing changes in their endangered category. So we know some species may be rare species in that category. They may be called rare, but they may become nearly threatened or more threatened or threatened species or endangered species, and they're nearing extinction, and then they may reach the extinction stage. So they may get lost. So it is also happening that some species, some reports are coming there where the species are moving towards the extinction phase. One positive impact is also there of the climate change, that we know the carbon dioxide will increase by climate change effect and also by pollution, uh, different kinds of pollutants also. So what happens? This carbon dioxide production, naturally, this is the requirement for photosynthesis. So biomass production may increase, will always increase when there is more carbon dioxide or CO2. What will happen? Production will be more. But biomass production may be more. Carbon dioxide absorption and change of the CO2 into the organic compounds may be affected by higher CO2 concentration, but at the same time, it is not always necessary, because for this higher photosynthetic rate or higher biomass production, we may require, we can say, nutrient-rich soil, we may require more water availability for that kind of vegetation, for that kind of forest, which is affecting the biomass production. So this is again related, not only related to the CO2 production, this is also related to the availability of water and availability of nutrients in the soil. That is again. But this production actually, sometimes these changes may be there or may be there in the nature, but they are localized to certain conditions. For a smaller area, it may happen. It is not a major phenomenon. So we can say this negative impacts actually are more, but this positive impact is not. It may be, we can say, it may be nullified in terms of the larger negative impacts of climate change on biodiversity. There is one term, sometimes we say ecological footprint, or we also call it global footprint. So this footprint actually is a measure of human demand on Earth's ecosystem. That is how much we are taking from the nature, how much amount of protected land and sea area is needed to regenerate the resources for the consumption of human beings, and remaining the waste remains there. That is not affecting the environment adversely. So this is called the ecological or global footprint of the nature, or it includes the biodiversity naturally and also the land surface. Adapting, now the thing is, biodiversity cannot keep up with and adapt to the speed at which the environment is changing. We know environment is changing, the nature is changing because of not only of one factor, that is the rising temperature. Sometimes it may be pollution, sometimes it may be different kinds of greenhouse gases also, but mostly we are talking of the nature component this time. So when the environment changes, we know biodiversity, we can say, controls or maintains itself But sometimes what happens when the climate is changing, weather patterns are changing. So climate is, we can say, nature or biodiversity is unable to adapt to these changes. It cannot keep up its control over the changing environment. So what we have to do to adapt to make the biodiversity to adapt to the changes, we have to go for the management intervention. So we'll have to go for so that we can say extinctions can be controlled, the species populations can be saved, whether they are of plants or animals. Some species may be rare or endangered, they may be saved in the nature. To adapt climate and preserve biodiversity, so we need different kinds of measures by which we can protect the biodiversity, we can conserve the biodiversity, we can manage the biodiversity along with the nature, along with the measures of biodiversity which it controls itself. So we have to make, what are the, we can say, measures which we can adapt, by which we can control or we can protect the biodiversity of the nature. We can develop resilient ecosystems. Resilient ecosystems, these are the ecosystems which can which can control, which can recover from the loss, any kind of loss. We have to help the nature so that such ecosystems become resilient against the changes. Primitive and obsolete cultivars, land races, they have to be controlled and they have to be saved. They need to be saved, primitive species, because whatever crops we are growing today, they are all from the, we can say, primitive wild forms of, we can say, wild varieties or wild native forms of the present cultivars. So wild species, naturally, they have to be studied and they have to be controlled and conserved and to be developed into new varieties, which are, we can say, which are adaptable, which can adapt themselves into the changing environment. We have to plant climate resilient species. This is a very important aspect. The climate resilient means where we can say they can adjust or they can cope with the climate change. Such species need to be planted. More plantations are to be made by such species which have got more capacity to adapt to the changing environment. Interventions for priority species. So among these, we have to identify the priority species and then we can use them. And the preparation of biological genetic inventories. So we have to make the inventory of these resources, the species and their genetic information, which are able to control or which are able to face or cope with the change in the biodiversity changes or the climate change. Then similarly, we have to identify certain areas which may be called as climate refuges or sacred groups. Sacred groups, we know these are the areas which are maintained by the human populations, different tribes, different people of, we can say, villages and societies. They have made their certain areas as sacred groups. So, these communities, the human communities, tribes, they say these areas are reserved in the sense they are not to be polluted. There nothing to be wasted there, nothing to be taken out from them, we can say, indiscriminately. That is very important. So similarly, with the climate refuges, they are called. So it's kind of refuge for certain species where, like sacred groups, where we can plant them. So naturally, where there are the taboos, or we can say there are the certain norms made by formed by the such societies or such tribes or such human communities, so that these places are actually reserved and they are protected by the human beings or society themselves. So we have to identify these places and where we can say where we can preserve these areas, particularly if this area contains a particular kind of biodiversity of animals and plants. And then habitat connectivity to allow species movement. Sometimes what happens, we go for development and there are two different communities of, we can say, in the nature, different kinds of ecosystems are there. And in these two ecosystems, we can call them corridors. You might have heard the corridors of plants, like we can say elephant corridors and then lion corridors, tiger corridors. So these corridors actually allow movement of species. So if we block the corridor, so what will happen? We can say that species will not be able to move from area A to area B because it is their seasonal movement. Sometimes in case of elephants, it may be seasonal movement because of water availability for drinking water, and for their movement also. They know their areas. So certainly when we go for road construction or railway line construction, sometimes naturally we have to leave these corridors. So sometimes in many areas we have seen the flyovers have been made so that the for such corridors of animal corridors are not affected and animal movement is not affected. This is very important. We should maintain it. We should allow. And several genetic slot developed by men. So special genetic slots need to be developed by us. And emission naturally to control the climate change. Ultimately, if you control the climate change or the global warming or production of greenhouse gases, naturally climate change effects may be reduced. Like as we say internationally and nationally, the Kyoto Protocol and COP 29, COP other conventions, COP-like conventions, they are responsible for controlling the different countries, and a group of different countries, they pledge at these forums to to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases and ozone destroying compounds like the CFCs. So that we know, there's a very common thing which all the teachers might be knowing, students might be knowing: in situ conservation and ex situ conservation. So in situ conservation actually it includes the conservation of species of plants and animals within their habitat. Within their habitat, they call in situ. It means within their habitat, like wildlife making or declaring wildlife sanctuaries, demarcating wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, biological reserves. Conservation reserves is a new concept in our country, and what heritage sites you must be knowing about these things. And ex situ conservation, this include a number of kinds, like we can say the seeds, biotechnology methods, and different kinds of plasma material tissue culture. This photo is actually of in Africa, the part of Africa in some mountain of Kenya, lower Kenya. So where we can say, just took it for example, where the different kinds of vegetations in the forest, they are destroyed. But sometimes due to the water, for the water resources, there are very big fights, or we can say there the conflict between the different populations comes up. Next, please. So reclamation and conservation through afforestation that we have discussed, we have to go for large scale plantations. Whenever we make a road or smaller road or a narrow road into 4 lane, 6 lane, or 8 lane, certainly the nearby forest area, nearby agricultural area, nearby grassland area is destroyed or it is wiped out. So what happens? We have to go for plantation. Immediate plantation is required for these areas, and that we have already discussed. Secret groups need to be protected always, which our forefathers or our primitive tribes and other communities or villages, they have already done it. Maintenance of traditional therapy. So naturally, we should go for traditional therapy that should be maintained, and medicinal plants can be used for this. Awareness campaigns should be there for controlling the biodiversity loss by different ways. We should make new laws for new acts and regulations. Through this also we can conserve the biodiversity. We should go for amendment in these regulations, acts and rules, new rules, how we can control the pollution, how we can control the biodiversity loss in different ways. Then we can go for patenting plants and animals under IPR, intellectual property rights. There is a patents are, we can say, developed or produced by different people, humans, groups, research centers, society, or an NGO also. So they actually make a certain technology. They also use a plant and animal material, or on the basis of this plant. There is one example is there, which is called GI. These days who are using GI, geographical indications. So that is, we can say, for a particular region. Suppose we say there is a coffee area, coffee plantation is there for a particular area. So we can make coffee may be made a GI for that particular area. Tea may be made a GI for any particular area. So many kinds of GI, geographical indications, also for other things also. So these IPRs also need to be made so that these things can be patented and their misuse can be prevented. Biosafety protocol is also required. Very important. This is the part of Convention of Biological Diversity, CBD. Biosafety protocol is whenever we go for any kind of, we can say, production of material using the biological resources, the plants, particularly the forest resources, plant resources. So we should go for necessary or the important or the we can say, biosafety protocol that needs to be implemented. Then indigenous, this is very important. Nowadays, we know our government is also protecting, preserving the indigenous knowledge. You must be having the Vedic knowledge, the indigenous knowledge about the tribal communities, their biodiversity, how they are using biodiversity, how they were using biodiversity, how their scientific technology, which is in the present day scientific technology, by present day definition, naturally we cannot define them as such. But if we go into their aspects in detail, we can know how scientific they were and how they were used. Different kinds of such traditional or preserving knowledge, indigenous knowledge for any kind. It may be medicinal use, it may be use of, we can say, animal rearing, it may be farming technology, farming concept by certain tribes and by certain people of the mountain areas, certain people of the Western Ghats, certain people of the Western, we can say, in the Nilgiri mountains. So these areas, these knowledge, the indigenous knowledge in different categories or different types, scientific knowledge, which was existed earlier, that has to be used, and how they were using this biodiversity and how they were using it, how they are managing it. I tell you one example here. There was, you might have heard the name of Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve, that is in Uttarakhand in the Himalayan region. This actually before China war, we can say in 61 and before up to 61 or 62, there existed the system of management of forest or resources of forest, like the grasses and the wood, firewood, or we can say this wood collected for the cooking, used in the cooking. So they used their whole forest was controlled by those villagers, and each family was given turn to control it, to manage it for a week. So what happened actually? That family was the controlling it. It was a turn by turn. So it was named. This management system was called bari. जिसको हिंदी में बारी कहते हैं. बारी का मतलब turn. So that kind of management, bari system of management, was prevalent in those days. Not only because they maintained their grasslands themselves, they maintained the grazing by their cattle, their goat and sheep themselves, and this was controlled by a particular family for 1 week. Then it was given this control to another family. When someone, we can say, someone didn't work according to the law, according to those customs, so that family, that particular person or family was fined for this, and this system existed in those days. Then similarly, we can say awareness about the endangered biodiversity should also be spread, should also be told to the people, and people's participation is very important. That I told you, in the Nanda Devi Biosphere Management is one of the example in our country where the people used it. It was only before the China war, when later on this was developed into a national park, then into a biosphere reserve. Now Valley of Flower, you must have heard about the Valley of Flowers. Valley of Flower is again now a part of this biosphere reserve. Earlier it was another national park, and now this biosphere, this Nanda Devi, this Valley of Flower National Park is now a World Heritage Site. So similarly, people's participation should be required. I know in Nepal, there are some forest national parks are maintained by the people along with the government. So in our country, we don't have any national park or biosphere reserve now, which is controlled with the people's participation. Then one concept is very important: basic citizenship concept. Basic citizenship concept, it should be included in the conservation plans of Himalayan biodiversity. It is defined as the understanding the geography and resource issues of the watershed in which they live, and the way these affect those who live elsewhere or downwards. We know Himalaya is the source of many rivers. We know it has the large we can say stories of snow cover, and that through this there are different rivers are coming up, and northern India, the major part of northern India is supported by the Himalayan rivers, the drinking water problem, and also the water for agriculture. So this basic citizenship concept is to be followed for conservation of biodiversity and also for the conservation of crops. Like we can say, for example, crops are there. We know crops are changing, and because of this, the crops, because of the change in the weather patterns, it is difficult to manage the crops sometimes because of the change. And in some areas of northern India, the people are sowing the crops earlier, because sometimes the summers are coming earlier and winter is also coming reaching earlier. So to cope with these conditions, certain crops are being we can say grown or stored earlier. And in some areas, you might have heard, in many parts of northern India, the rice crops are being we can say they are being sown, or they are being cultivated 2 or 3 times in the same season. Two crops are very common in the you can say in the this Tarai belt of Uttarakhand and some other parts of Uttar Pradesh also, where the two rice crops are being grown. Early growing rice crops are being grown in the one season because of the we can say widening of the summer temperature. So they are doing it. So mountain natives, agar hum iske baat kare mountain natives ka, it is said that they are the true owners. Not only mountains, but anywhere it's we can say it's whether it's Jharkhand, whether it's Madhya Pradesh, it's another state, any state of the country where natives are there, the tribes are there. They may be called tribes, or they are the true, we can say, the earlier dwellers or living population there. So they are the true owners. We should not take away. We should not take away their resources, because they have the more right on their those resources. So if you go for any development activity, we should have their participation in all the kinds of activities, any kind of activities. Gandhiji has already called upon the community to seek self-reliance. Gandhiji was known for the self-reliance concept, that we should do our job ourselves. So to develop the ways of simple life, harmonious life, non-destructive violence. Here he was the non-violence. He has the concept of non-violence. So this concept actually is applicable to the present day also, because we have to live in harmony with the nature. We have to go for non-destructive methods with the nature. So that's all. Thank you very much. So we need to protect the nature and the biodiversity, and we have to save it for ourselves and save it for future generations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. To make us acquaint with the levels of biodiversity, then ecological services, and also inspired us to take actions toward more sustainable and resilient future. I invite Dr. Gurpreet Kaur ma'am to present vote of thanks.
Good evening, one and all present over here. Thank you so much, Suman ma'am, for providing me this opportunity. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. A.K. Sharma sir for organizing such wonderful webinars, for mentoring us. Sir, we are grateful to you for your consistent guidance and support. On behalf of Bhavans and my colleagues, I would like to thank Professor Govind Singh ji for giving us such a thought-provoking session on biodiversity in climate change scenario. Biodiversity is affected by every aspect of climate change. Climate change significantly impacts biodiversity by disrupting habitats, altering ecosystems, functions, and threatening species. By more frequent and droughts, catastrophic bushfires, storms, hailstorms, etc. The relationship between nature and mankind is very well explained by you, sir, explaining us that nature is the home to live. If we love nature, nature will also love us by providing various free of cost services, that is the ecosystem services. Biodiversity cannot keep up with and adapt to speed up at which the environment is changing. So we should go for sustainable management. We all sincerely thank you, sir, for showering your insights and taking time out for us to share your knowledge and experience with us. Once again, thank you so much, sir, for your time, expertise, and dedication. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir, for being with us today.